more than 100 unique styles of beer, each with their own set of ingredients, process, guidelines, history, and experience. If you're a beer lover, an industry leader, or somewhere in between, a better knowledge of beer style will improve your life and your work.
Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style, essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. I'm Julia Herz.
And I'm Jeremy Storton.
We're advanced Cicerones, beer judges, home brewers, and we're excited to guide you through the vast and wonderful world of beer styles.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style on this end of week day, happy hour time. Could be 2025 or could be 2024 or could be 2050. Who knows when you're
listening?
Could be
2224. Who knows?
Yeah. Who cares about the numbers? Beer is timeless. This episode is timeless because Belgian Dubbel will always be relevant. And here's the deal, y'all. We have landed in BJCP style guidelines, the monastic ale category. Belgian Dubbel, and I want to emphasize D-U-B-B-E-L, not doble, not D-O-U-B-L-E. It's double, D-U-B-B-E-L, is such a great style to get to know. This is a style with malt complexity, not just yeast complexity, right? Many beer styles that come from Belgium are really more about the yeast. This has malt complexity to get to know for days. And so I'm going to go ahead and open mine and kind of set us up that you're going to look for darker colors, that malt complexity. Whoops, gusher, need my towel. Sad, didn't get on my computer though, at least. And you know, sometimes these beers, you'd miss the whole show. I'm glad I didn't have it on the camera. Sometimes these beers, and look at this craziness. Look at that.
Yeah.
They're bottle conditioned, right? Many of them are. So it's just like champagne when you're opening most Belgian style beers, some German style beers, and the variety of you want to be on the ready for that kind of gush or geyser.
Yeah. Because every time you open one, it might be a party.
I just got the party, and I'm now pouring the party.
You just won the championship.
Dark and brown and rich, and we're going to talk about the flavor and everything to do. But before that happens, I want Jeremy to align us on the ingredients and brewing process and some of the history.
Yeah, absolutely. The ingredients in this can vary depending on producer to producer, whether it's a traditional Trappist monastic producer or a abbey non-monastic brewer who's just making this style, or even people like me. I've made this at home. We're still looking at a Belgian Pils as a base malt. We're looking at some people may add some caramelized malts, but we are looking at caramelized sugar or Belgian candy sugar. Again, this is easy to make at home. You take water, you sugar, and maybe a little bit of acid like cream of tartar or lemon juice, and then you do it a certain right way. But you can make this at home. You're going to end up with Belgian yeast strains as well, because that's the character of the style. This is what really makes the style. Yes, it is malt complex, but a lot of beers are malty and complex. It's the phenols and the esters from the Belgian yeast that are going to define this style. Hop-wise, we're looking at continental hops, which is a way of saying it's either British or it's German, along those lines. Spices are not traditional. If you get a spiced double, it's probably because they wanted to create a variation of it. Maybe something that reminds you of mulled spices come fall. I brewed this at home and I split it off in two different batches, and just to kind of give you a sense of beer character. I brewed 10 gallons, split off into 5 gallons, and used a Belgian yeast to make a double, and I used a kind of German lager yeast to essentially make some version of a Maibach. And so that's really where they parted. But there's a lot of crossover and overlap with ingredients and flavor profile, but it's that yeast that really defines that. So keep that in mind as we move forward. But so that's ingredients. You've got the glass, Julia. Let's see the appearance.
So appearance is, first of all, the bottle is even going to say it's got etching that says Abbey on it, and insignia, which is wonderful. Brown bottle, which is going to keep it more protected from the light. And then appearance, once you pour it into your glass, is going to bring this dark, rich, beyond ruby, light brown, dark copper type of color. Appearance for carbonation is obviously aggressively carbonated, beautiful color of foam, that's going to collapse eventually and quickly. But you've got mostly a clear beer. Mine, you can tell it was re-fermenting in the bottle. It's definitely cloudy. It's got some haze, and I was careful how I poured it, but because it was such a geyser and a gusser, the yeast just got all mucked up in it. But so it probably had some sediment before I poured it, and now that's in my glass. But it's just as pretty, and nothing's missing from that.
Yeah. When we talk about aroma, this is a malt forward, closely followed by yeast beer. One could argue it's malt and yeast forward. So coming from the malt, we're looking at a moderate to moderately high, complex, rich, malty character. We're looking at chocolate, caramel, toasted bread crusts. We're looking at esters of dark dried fruits, raisins, plums, dried cherries. There could be some banana, apple, prunes, that sort of thing. And we are talking about the guidelines. So, variations are allowed, but my personal rule for this: if it's burnt, if it's roasted, you blew it. That's I'm going to say that, and that's just me. But this should not be toasted, or this should not be roasty. It shouldn't be burnt. That's a completely different thing. So the malt should be inviting. When we get into the hops, none to low hops. I mean, the hops are there for preservative. It's not really there for the flavor. The yeast and the alcohol are going to balance out this malt. I didn't talk about the phenols. We're looking at light to medium spice like phenols. Could be peppery. You could get a little bit of maybe a touch of clove in there too, depending on how they brew it. The alcohol as well. We are going to get some higher alcohol out of this. It should never be harsh. It always be smooth and interesting and integrated, but it could be low to none from this kind of softer alcohol character. And this all, and of course, I think I inadvertently transferred over into flavor. I always kind of put aroma and flavor together. So I think I stepped on your toes while we're dancing around this flavor profile. So you can step on my toes back when you get to flavor, but the aroma and flavor really go together in this one.
Yeah, they do. And even the style guidelines basically start with flavor profile similar to aroma. So take the esters, take the phenols, take the alcohol, any discussion from hops from aroma. And that's going to be very similar to what you're going to notice in the taste. You are then, though, going to get to bitterness. This beer style and different examples can have medium low to medium bitterness, and that's going to help the aspect of that residual sugar kind of calm down and be balanced. And then it is really about the malt complexity, the ester, the fruity ester, and the spicy phenol complexity of what you're going to get front and center in the flavor. The style guidelines, even though in flavor is not truly mouthfeel, talk about how it's going to finish dry. But that aftertaste is really going to have the linger, and it's happening for me now. I'm getting an essence of kind of malt complexity, right? Maybe some kind of a lightly burnt caramel, but don't think smoke. You're getting darker honeys, right? You're getting these brown malt notes. You're not just getting Pilsner malt, you're getting what they snuck in there. Some styles, the guidelines talk about, can actually add some kind of caramelized sugar syrup. That's okay. It's a little shoddy, but that syrup will not just bring color, it will bring some complexity to the flavor. And then adjuncts of fermentable sugars, depending on what type of sugars, you could have at the table when you're brewing this, some Belgian candy sugar. Belgian candy sugar can be anywhere from California raisins to kind of older, more aged and dried raisins. So think about that aspect also in the flavor delivered by the malt.
Yeah. And we know it was the Belgian and the Dutch monks that really kind of defined the style. So we have a better sense of the center of the bullseye of what the style ought to be. Again, I'm not going to say these are rules, but we know the origin of this. And so all that Belgian candy sugar, think rock candy if you ever gone as a kid and had rock candy, but you have perfectly clear to yellow to amber to dark, and so you have a flavor profile that comes out of that as well. But that's still sugar. It's very fermentable. And so the yeast are going to gobble that up. It's going to attenuate really down. The body's going to drop. The alcohol is going to rise. And when it comes to mouthfeel, the guidelines call this a medium to medium full body. I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly. I'd say light to medium body. There's not a lot of residual sugar in these things. There's a lot of flavor. There's a lot of carbonation. There's a lot of perception of body. But I think if you separate everything else out away from body, the body's still going to be light to medium. That's just my experience chiming in here. But the guidelines do allow for a moderate to medium full. But that carbonation, medium, high, this is going to be very effervescent. It's not going to be aggressive and painful, but it's going to be assertive. The light alcohol is likely going to be there. It usually pops up mid palate for me and gives it a little pop of peppermint. But it's actually delightful. It's warming. It's enjoyable. And the body is still going to be smooth. You have this assertive carbonation, this light body. This light body, but the texture of the beer is going to be smooth. And that's a really weird thing to try and parse out and kind of think about in different ways. But if you spend time with this, you'll be able to start figuring all this stuff out. That's mouthfeel. Let's talk about what's next. Style comparison.
And in style comparison, just a super fun, sessionable way to spend time would be to get a Belgian double and a Belgian quad.
Yeah.
They're going to be very similar, although the double is less strong and intense than the Belgian quad or dark strong ale, as the style guidelines call the quads. So that's an easy way to determine and dial in. And again, this is going to have less alcohol than that Belgian dark strong or quad. And just not have as much intensity to it. Another one interesting from the style guidelines, and I love the twist to try it, is a Dunkelsbach, so a German Bach beer. So you've got Belgian yeast characteristics that the German Dunkelsbach won't have. So that's going to be really helpful, but they're potentially similar in strength and weight. And also residual sugar. So I would definitely try it with a Dunkelsbach. Love that suggestion. And then they also suggest a Belgian blonde. It's an easy one. If you're more kind of just getting into your studies, you should go for that. Once you get further in your studies, you're going to be able to nail that right out of the gates. But trying it against a Belgian blonde ale, because it's got more richer malt flavors, more ester intensity, obviously darker in color. So that would be a fun one to try as well.
Yeah. When we talk about commercial examples, granted, you can brew this at home. It's not hard to do. There's a lot of breweries will dabble in the Belgian beers. If they're kind of a brew it all type of brewery, they'll likely have a Belgian version at some point. But of course, there are some Belgian inspired breweries that kind of really focus on these styles, and they will definitely have this. It's quite common. What we're looking for, the common one that is very ubiquitous, is the Chimay Red, Chimay Premier. That's a great one. Rochefort 6, Westmalle Dubbel. St. Bernardus is not a Trappist brewery, but they're an Abbey brewery, but their story and their roots were very, very tied to Westmalle. So they're going to do it really well. But we're looking at the St. Bernardus Pater 6. This is a new one to me. Haven't seen it, tried it. The Corsendonk Brune. And of course, La Trappe is another monastery that brews a fantastic double. But look for the word double and you're probably really, really close to something great. Let's get into the numbers.
So vital statistics, because the style guidelines are going to be deliberate in what this style is supposed to nail, you're looking for a range of alcohol, 6 to 7.6%, right? So that's going to come from original gravity of 1062 to 1075. Those are close to your brain saying, oh, could be 6 to 7.6%. And then final gravity is actually really a broad range. I always say maddening because 1008 to 1018, that is either definitely dry or definitely sweet. So different examples are going to have different ranges of residual sugar. International bitterness units, which is going to work to balance that sweetness. 15, very mellow, right? 25, starting to become more perceptible levels. So international bitterness units for Belgian Dubbel is 15 to 25. And then standard reference method, or SRM, color range is 10 to 17. You're getting to that, copper to light brown color. And mine right here in the glass, the Chimay red, is definitely displaying that. So I would think that it's one that you want to remember. This is a medium level in alcohol. I would never call this sessionable, although I always emphasize most wines you drink these days, my goodness, they're getting up to 13 and 14% if you're drinking California Reds. So 6 to 7.6% is not aggressive, but it's certainly not sessionable. And that's a good thing, because you want complexity, you want intensity, and that's what that medium level ethanol will deliver.
Yeah, and frankly, I'd rather have 16 ounces of beer than 5 ounces of a wine, and because there's more to enjoy. If you are an European Brewery Convention person, color-wise, we're looking at 20 to 34. If you're a Plato person, for original Plato, we're looking at 15.5 to 18.5, and final Plato, we're looking at about 2 to 4.5. Just for those who speak that lingo. Glass type. Frankly, if Julie and I were in Belgium and we ordered one of these, it's going to come in the glass designed for that particular brewery and that particular brand, that particular beer. And if they don't have any on hand, then we'll have to choose something else. A lot of these have their own specific glass, and a generic glass for this would be a goblet or a chalice, kind of like a white wine glass with the top third chopped off. Frankly, I'm not a huge fan of the goblet because they're kind of tricky to manage. They're not as tricky as a martini glass, but they're still somewhat tricky. I personally love a stemmed tulip because it helps concentrate the volatiles even better. The spill ability is lower than it is with the goblet or chalice, but a goblet or chalice is kind of the norm if you're going there. The bottom line with this beer has a fancy story, has fancy complex flavors. Give it a fancy glass. I'll be honest. Temperature wise, this is my general rule is the darker and stronger, the warmer, and the lighter and weaker, the colder. This one, I want to put this squarely right around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. What is that, like 7 degrees Celsius? Because it will become more expressive. It will open up even more as it warms up. If it's too cold, if it's pulled out of the fridge, then it's like we're listening to a great orchestra through one tiny little speaker. It's not enough. We need the full experience. So that's glass, that's temp. What would you eat with this, Julia?
I'm going to take you back to the color, right?
Yeah.
And that looks like the color of barbecue sauce to me. We could talk Georgia, Texas, Kansas City. I don't want to get into fights. Don't worry about it. But that's the color of barbecue sauce. And because this has such a high aggressive sense of carbonation and definite depths and layers of malt complexity, I want it with barbecue. That's where I would go straight away. It's got enough alcohol, I think, to stand up. And frankly, if it goes on that final gravity scale of higher than 10.008, it's got some residual sugar that can also help calm heat. I always talk about in pairing, sweet calms heat. It's a good way to remember that. So residual sugar calms capsaicin heat. So if you have barbecue that's a little got a spicy kick, then this is going to be what you want to go for. And I have a respect to our vegetarian and vegan friends. Barbecue sauce does not have to be slathered on physical meat. It can be on any protein that you like. And the beer is going to act like the sauce, but it's also going to act like the beverage that's supposed to refresh your palate and get you ready for the next bite.
I completely agree with that. In fact, I remember having this beer with some barbecue brisket, and it blew my mind. I think I first fell in love with this beer style. I happened to be in Barcelona and had some seared scallops, or I'm sorry, not seared scallops, some mussels with this beer, and it was amazing. And while we're still in, thinking about Spain, there's a dish there that maybe most of you know called patatas bravas, and that they basically take fried potatoes or fries, and they put it in a bowl, put an egg on top, smother with aioli and smoked paprika. That would be amazing with this type of beer as well. A wash rind cheese would be amazing. Beef stew, but again, for folks who don't want to eat meat, something savory, something spicy, maybe like a spicy lentils or something like that would just be killer with this. So there's a lot we can do. It can take you a lot of places. Nuts, cheese, have it for dessert, whatever. Give it a try.
I love it. Yeah, hungry for sure, and it's got
As
a
always.
lot. It's a perfect launching pad of a beverage to so many types of pairings, and the
Yeah,
best way to know what you like is just to experiment, test, taste, and tweak, and do it again.
absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers. Be well, everybody.
Thank you for listening to A Sense of Beer Style, the essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. With advanced Cicerones, me, Julia,
And me, Jeremy.
tune into the next episode as we continue exploring the world of beer styles and what to make of them. We encourage you to listen to the prepisodes to build your foundation and better understand beer styles.
And before the next episode, I'd like to ask you to review the show and let us know what you'd like featured in upcoming episodes. Until next time, here's to you and your sense of beer style. Thank you for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.